The fluorescent lights of Terminal C hummed overhead like angry wasps. I stood at the gate counter, my boarding pass trembling slightly in my manicured fingers, while the airline representative, a thin woman with kind eyes and an unfortunate job, delivered the words that would shatter my marriage in the most public way possible. "Ma'am, I'm so sorry, but according to our policy, you'll need to purchase an additional seat for your comfort and the comfort of other passengers." The words hung in the recycled airport air like a death sentence. Around us, the terminal buzzed with the usual chaos of delayed flights and crying babies. But I felt like I was standing in a spotlight, every eye boring into my size 18 frame. I could feel the heat rising in my cheeks, the familiar burn of shame I'd worked so hard to overcome. But it wasn't the airline employee's words that destroyed me. It was what came next. "Jesus Christ, Helena. This is exactly why I told you to lose weight before this trip." I turned to look at Marcus, 6'2" Marcus with his receding hairline and beer gut that he somehow convinced himself made him look distinguished. The man I'd loved for 8 years. The man whose credit cards were maxed out, whose business had been failing for 2 years, whose vacation I was funding entirely. "Marcus?" I started, but he was just getting warmed up. "Do you have any idea how embarrassing this is? My whole family is watching." He gestured wildly toward the gate area where his parents, sister, and 2 nephews sat, pretending not to stare. "I'm not buying another ticket. Figure it out yourself. Take a bus, drive, I don't care, but I'm not missing this trip because you can't control yourself." The airport terminal seemed to tilt on its axis. 8 years of marriage, and this was who he really was. Not the man who whispered sweet things in my ear when he needed money for his startup. Not the man who called me his beautiful wife when we were alone. This was Marcus when his image was on the line. I looked at him, really looked at him, as if seeing him for the first time, and something cold and calculating settled in my chest like winter frost. "You know what, Marcus?" I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "You're absolutely right." He blinked, clearly expecting more of a fight. "I'll figure it out," I continued, pulling my phone from my purse. "You go ahead. Have a wonderful time." There was something in my tone, maybe the calm, or maybe the slight smile playing at the corners of my mouth, that made him pause. But his family was watching, and Marcus Caldwell had never been one to back down when his reputation was at stake. "Good," he said, puffing up like a rooster. "Maybe this will finally motivate you to do something about yourself." As he walked away, rolling his carry-on with the confidence of a man who thought he'd just won Rome, I was already scrolling through my contacts. The smile that had confused him was growing wider. Because Marcus had made one crucial miscalculation. In his rush to humiliate me, he'd forgotten exactly who had been bankrolling his life for the past 2 years. Before we go any further, welcome back to Revenge Stories with Kyle. And if this is your first time watching any of our videos, we encourage you to hit that subscribe button. Your support means the world to us, and it motivates us to continue creating even more powerful stories for you. So stick with us to the very end. And if this story moves you, drop your comments and share with a friend. Now, let's dive back in. My name is Helena Marsh Caldwell, and I'm 31 years old. I'm a financial advisor who specializes in high net worth portfolio management. Ironic, considering I'd been managing my husband's worthless portfolio for years. I live in Scottsdale, Arizona, where the desert sun teaches you that some things are meant to be harsh and unforgiving. I've always believed that money is power, but only if you're willing to use it. For too long, I'd been throwing my power away, funding the dreams and schemes of a man who saw my body as an embarrassment and my bank account as his personal ATM. But standing in that airport, watching Marcus swagger toward the gate like he just conquered Rome, I remembered something my grandmother used to say. "Helena, honey, never let a man forget who's holding the purse strings. The minute you do, he'll try to hang you with them." The backstory is important here because it explains why that moment at the airport cut so deep and why my revenge was so perfectly calibrated. Marcus and I met at a financial conference in 2016. He was this charismatic entrepreneur with big dreams and a bigger smile, pitching his revolutionary logistics software to anyone who'd listen. I was a junior advisor then, just starting to build my client base, but already showing the kind of instincts that would make me successful. He pursued me relentlessly. Flowers, expensive dinners, weekend trips to wine country. He made me feel beautiful, desirable, worthy. For a woman who'd spent her teenage years being called names and her 20s being overlooked, it was intoxicating. What I didn't realize until much later was that Marcus had done his homework. He knew I came from money, my grandfather had built a small empire in real estate development, and I'd inherited both his business sense and his portfolio. Marcus could smell opportunity like a shark smells blood. We got married in 2018, a beautiful ceremony that I paid for entirely. Marcus's startup was just hitting a rough patch, he assured me. Things would turn around once they got their next round of funding. All he needed was a little support, a little faith. The rough patch lasted 4 years. I funded his office space, his employees, his marketing campaigns, his conference trips, his networking dinners. I covered our mortgage, our car payments, our insurance. When his parents needed help with their medical bills, my checkbook appeared. When his sister couldn't afford her kids' private school tuition, I quietly transferred the money. Through it all, Marcus played the role of the struggling entrepreneur who just needed one big break. And I played the role of the supportive wife, because that's what love was supposed to look like. Sacrifice, compromise, putting your partner's dreams ahead of your own comfort. But there were signs. Moments when the mask slipped and I saw who Marcus really was underneath all that charm. Like the time we were at his cousin's wedding and he introduced me to the groomsmen as my wife, Helena. She's got a great personality. The emphasis on personality hit like a slap. Or the night he came home drunk from a client dinner and suggested I look into that surgery. You know, the one that would fix everything. Each incident was small enough to rationalize away. He was stressed about work, I'd had too much to drink, he didn't really mean it. But they accumulated like paper cuts, tiny wounds that never quite healed. The worst part wasn't even the cruelty, it was the conditional nature of his affection. When we were alone, when he needed something, when his charm was required to keep the money flowing, I was his beautiful wife and his brilliant woman. But the moment there was an audience, the moment his image was on the line, I became his burden.
I started to notice how he positioned himself in photos to hide as much of me as possible. How he'd suggest I skip certain events because I might not fit in. How he'd volunteer me to stay home with the kids at family gatherings while the fun adults went out. Still, I told myself it was worth it. Marriage required sacrifice. He'd come around once his business took off. Once the pressure eased, he'd go back to being the man I fell in love with. But that morning at the airport, paying for our family vacation to Costa Rica, flights, resort, excursions, everything, I realized something devastating. The man I fell in love with had never existed. There was only Marcus. And Marcus was a man who saw me as both an ATM and an embarrassment, in that order. The vacation had been his idea, naturally. "We need this, Helena," he'd said, pulling me close on the couch one evening. "Just us and my family, somewhere beautiful. It'll be like a second honeymoon." His family. Not my family. His. I'd suggested including my sister and her kids, but Marcus had waved that away. "Let's keep it intimate," he'd said. "Just the core group." The core group being his parents, Richard and Patricia, who'd never quite warmed to me despite 8 years of marriage, his sister Janet and her twin boys, Tyler and Trevor, who were sweet kids but exhausting, and us. I'd booked everything through my travel agent. First-class flights, a luxury resort with private villas, a rental car, dinner reservations, spa treatments, even a sunset catamaran cruise. The total came to just over $38,000, charged directly to my Black American Express card. Marcus had been over the moon, bragging to his colleagues about the family trip he was planning, carefully omitting any mention of who was funding it. In his version of events, he was the generous patriarch treating his family to a well-deserved getaway. I'd even bought him new vacation clothes, linen shirts that minimized his gut, designer swim trunks, Italian leather sandals, everything to make him look like the successful businessman he pretended to be. The night before our departure, he'd been particularly affectionate, talking about our future, about the changes he was going to make, about how much this trip meant to him. We'd made love for the first time in months, and I'd actually let myself believe that maybe we were turning a corner. I should have known better. The betrayal at the airport wasn't just about the extra seat, though that was humiliating enough. It was about everything that moment revealed. When the airline representative first approached us, I'd been mortified, but ready to handle it quietly. I'd gained weight over the past year, stress eating my way through Marcus's latest business failures and our increasingly distant marriage. I knew I was larger than I'd ever been, and I'd been dreading something like this might happen. But I expected my husband to support me, to stand by me, to handle the situation with grace and dignity. Partners are supposed to protect each other from the world's cruelty, not amplify it. Instead, Marcus had chosen that moment to unleash 8 years of buried resentment, using my weight as a weapon in front of his family, the airline staff, and a terminal full of strangers. "This is exactly why I told you to lose weight before this trip." That sentence was a masterclass in psychological warfare. It suggested this conversation had happened before. It hadn't. It implied my appearance was a known problem we'd discussed and I'd simply ignored. We hadn't. It positioned him as the long-suffering husband dealing with an irresponsible wife. I wasn't. But the real knife twist was what came next. "I'm not buying another ticket. Figure it out yourself. Take a bus, drive, I don't care." In that moment, Marcus revealed the truth about our entire marriage. I wasn't his partner, I was his inconvenience. My feelings, my dignity, my presence on this vacation I'd paid for, none of it mattered as much as his comfort and his image. He was willing to abandon me at the airport rather than experience 5 minutes of mild embarrassment. He was ready to start his family vacation by leaving his wife stranded in Phoenix, and he expected me to somehow make my own way to Costa Rica while he enjoyed the trip I'd funded. The casual cruelty of it took my breath away. This wasn't a moment of weakness or poor judgment. This was Marcus showing me exactly what he thought I was worth. But here's what Marcus didn't know about his wife. I've never been one to accept defeat lying down. As he walked away, rolling his designer luggage toward the gate, luggage I'd bought him for his birthday, something crystallized in my mind. All the years of subtle put-downs, the conditional affection, the financial manipulation, it was all leading to this moment. Marcus had just given me the greatest gift of our marriage: absolute moral clarity. I watched him join his family at the gate, watched him gesture back toward me with what I could only assume was some explanation about my dramatic behavior. I saw his mother, Patricia, shake her head in that disapproving way that she'd perfected over the years. I watched Janet whisper something to the boys, who glanced over at me with confused expressions. They were all complicit in this humiliation. They were all perfectly willing to enjoy a vacation funded by my money while treating me like an inconvenience. Fine. If that's how they wanted to play this game, I was ready to show them who they actually were dealing with. I found a quiet corner near the duty-free shops and made my first call. "Marriott Reservations, this is Jennifer. How can I help you today?" "Hi, Jennifer. I need to cancel a group reservation. The confirmation number is..." I rattled off the number I'd memorized, along with my credit card details for verification. "I see the reservation here, Mrs. Caldwell. That's 7 nights for 6 guests in 3 adjoining suites at our Los Sueños Resort and Marina. The total was, oh my, quite substantial. May I ask the reason for cancellation?" "Family emergency," I said smoothly. "I need to cancel everything immediately and have the funds returned to my card." "Of course. I do see that this is quite last minute, and normally there would be significant cancellation fees, but given the circumstances, let me see what I can do." While Jennifer worked her magic and the magic of my platinum status and 8-figure portfolio with their hotel group, I made my second call. Copa Airlines customer service. "Hi, I need to cancel 6 first-class tickets to San Jose, Costa Rica. The departure is..." I gave them the flight details. The representative was professionally sympathetic, especially when I mentioned the family emergency that was preventing our travel. My status with the airline meant minimal fees, and the funds would be back in my account within 3 business days. Call number 3 was to my travel agent, Patricia, not to be confused with my mother-in-law, Patricia, though both had caused me significant stress over the years. "Helena, are you calling from the airport? Is everything okay with your trip?" "Actually, Patricia, I need to cancel everything. The rental car, the dinner reservations, the spa appointments, the catamaran cruise." "Oh no, what happened?" "Let's just say the trip is off. Can you make sure all the cancellations go through and the refunds come back to my card?" "Of course, honey. You know what? Given how much business you've brought me over the years, I'm going to make sure you don't pay a dime in cancellation fees. Consider it my contribution to whatever's going on." By the time I finished my calls, Marcus's flight was boarding. I could see him in the gate area, looking increasingly agitated as he checked his phone. He was probably getting notifications from the airline about changes to his booking. But I wasn't done. You know what's interesting? Most people stay silent when they're betrayed like this. Would you? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And if you've ever felt invisible in your own relationship, hit that subscribe button. Trust me, you'll want to see how this ends.
My 4th call was to the resort concierge I'd been working with to plan special surprises for the trip. "Buenos dias, Mrs. Caldwell. We are so excited to welcome your family tomorrow. Actually, Carlos, there's been a change of plans. The reservation has been canceled due to a family emergency." There was a pause. "Canceled? But, Señora, we have prepared so much for your arrival. The champagne service, the couple's massage you requested for you and your husband, the private beach dinner." "I know, Carlos, and I'm sorry, but I'll tell you what. I'll be taking that couple's massage myself. Book me the presidential suite at your sister property in Manuel Antonio, the one we talked about. Just for one. I'll be there tomorrow evening." "See, of course. But your family won't be joining me." The beautiful thing about revenge is that it works best when your target doesn't realize it's coming until it's too late to stop it. Marcus boarded his flight in blissful ignorance, probably telling his family how he'd handled the situation and how they'd have a better time without me anyway. He was probably spinning it as my choice, my decision to throw a tantrum instead of dealing with the problem like an adult. I could picture him settling into his first-class seat, the seat I'd paid for, accepting congratulations from his family for standing up for himself. Maybe his mother was finally proud of him for not enabling me. Maybe his sister was impressed by his newfound backbone. They had 6 hours to enjoy that feeling, because that's how long their flight was. I, meanwhile, drove home in my Tesla, also paid for by me, and spent the afternoon doing something I hadn't done in months. Whatever I wanted. I ordered Thai food from my favorite place, the one Marcus always complained was too spicy. I opened a bottle of the good wine, the Bordeaux I'd been saving for a special occasion.
I put on comfortable clothes and settled in to watch all the romantic comedies Marcus called mindless drivel. Around midnight, Phoenix time, I got the first text. Marcus: Helena, what the hell is going on? The resort says our reservation is canceled? I finished my wine before responding. Me: I figured it out, just like you said. Have a great trip. My phone buzzed continuously for the next hour. Marcus, Janet, Richard, even Patricia, all demanding explanations, all increasingly panicked as they realized the scope of what had happened. The beautiful part was that there was nothing they could do. They were in Costa Rica with no hotel, no rental car, no planned activities, and no way to book alternatives on such short notice during peak season. Everything decent was already full, and what wasn't full was far beyond Marcus's actual financial means. Marcus tried calling the hotels directly, tried using his own credit cards to make new reservations, but his credit was maxed out, and his checking account, which I'd been supplementing for years, couldn't cover a last-minute luxury vacation for 6 people. By morning, I was getting increasingly desperate messages. Marcus: Helena, please. The kids are confused, and my parents are furious. Just tell me what you want. Janet: Helena, I don't know what Marcus did, but Tyler and Trevor keep asking why we can't go swimming. Please don't punish the kids for whatever happened between you two. Richard: Young lady, this is incredibly childish behavior. Whatever disagreement you and my son are having, it doesn't justify ruining a family vacation. That last message made me laugh out loud. Young lady. After 8 years of marriage, my father-in-law was still talking to me like a misbehaving child, rather than the woman who had been financially supporting his son for the better part of a decade. I didn't respond to any of them. Instead, I drove to the spa at the Four Seasons and booked myself a full day of treatments: massage, facial, body wrap, the works. While Marcus and his family figured out their sleeping arrangements in San Jose, I'd checked and everything decent was booked solid. I was getting a hot stone massage and sipping cucumber water. That evening, I finally responded to Marcus's messages. Just one text. Me: I figured it out, just like you said. Have a great trip. The thing about revenge is that it's most satisfying when it's perfectly calibrated to the crime. Marcus had humiliated me publicly, abandoned me at the airport, and expected me to simply accept his cruelty. So I gave him exactly what he'd given me: abandonment, humiliation, and the opportunity to figure it out himself. He wanted to go on vacation without me. Mission accomplished. He wanted to avoid the embarrassment of being associated with me. Well, now he had the much greater embarrassment of explaining to his family why they were sleeping in the San Jose airport hotel instead of a luxury resort. He told me to take a bus or drive to Costa Rica. I'd done him one better. I'd stayed home and left him to navigate Central American hospitality without a credit card and no plan. But the real genius of my revenge was that I hadn't actually hurt anyone. I'd simply withdrawn my financial support, something I had every right to do. The vacation was my gift to them, and I was perfectly entitled to ungive it. Marcus couldn't accuse me of being vindictive without admitting that the entire family vacation had been funded by the wife he'd just publicly humiliated. He couldn't complain about being abandoned without acknowledging that he'd abandoned me first. He couldn't even get sympathy from his family without revealing the full scope of his financial dependence on me. The beauty of it was that every move he'd made to hurt me had actually hurt him more. His public cruelty had backfired spectacularly, and now he was trapped by his own narrative. I spent 3 days at home, taking care of myself in ways I'd forgotten were possible. I got my hair done, bought myself new clothes, had lunch with friends I'd neglected while managing Marcus's ego and finances, I felt lighter than I had in years. And not just because of the weight I'd been carrying in my marriage. On Wednesday, I got a call from an unknown international number. Helena, Marcus's voice was small, defeated. Can we please talk? I'm listening. I messed up. Really, really messed up. Yes, you did. My family won't even speak to me right now. They're flying back today, and my dad had to put the hotel bill on his credit card. He's furious. I imagine he is. Helena, I need you to know that I'm sorry. What I said at the airport, how I acted, it was inexcusable. I waited. I was embarrassed and I took it out on you, and that was wrong. You didn't deserve that. No, I didn't. Can you forgive me? Can we try to work this out? And there it was, the question I'd been expecting. Marcus was sorry. Marcus wanted to work things out. Marcus needed me to be the bigger person and take him back. A month ago, I might have said yes. A month ago, I might have rationalized his behavior, accepted his apology, and gone back to being the supportive wife who funded his dreams and absorbed his cruelty. But sitting in my own house, wearing clothes that made me feel beautiful, drinking coffee that was exactly how I liked it, I realized something profound. I didn't want him back. Marcus, I said carefully, I want you to listen to me very carefully. Okay? In 8 years of marriage, you have contributed approximately 15% to our household expenses. I've paid for our home, our cars, our vacations, your business, your family's emergencies, and your lifestyle. Are you aware of that? Silence.
I've also endured 8 years of conditional love. You adore me when you need something and tolerate me when you don't. You're proud of me in private and embarrassed by me in public. You treat me like an investment that hasn't paid off the way you expected. Helena, I'm not finished. What happened at the airport wasn't an isolated incident. It was the culmination of every small cruelty, every backhanded compliment, every moment you made me feel like I was lucky to have you instead of the other way around.
I could hear him breathing on the other end of the line.
So no, Marcus, I can't forgive you. Not because I'm cruel, but because I finally understand what I'm worth. And what I'm worth is so much more than being treated like your embarrassing meal ticket. Helena, please, I know I've been an ass, but we can fix this. I'll change. I promise I'll do better. You'll change until the next time your image is on the line. You'll do better until the next time you need money or emotional support. And then you'll go right back to being exactly who you are. That's not true. Marcus, you abandoned me at the airport because you were embarrassed by my size. But you expected me to fund your vacation anyway. You wanted me gone but accessible, absent but available. That's not marriage. That's employment. And I quit.
The divorce was finalized 6 months later. Marcus tried to fight for alimony, claiming he'd given up career opportunities to support my work. His lawyer quickly advised him to drop that argument when my legal team produced 8 years of financial records showing exactly who had been supporting whom. He tried to claim half of my inherited portfolio, but the prenup we'd signed, the one he'd insisted was just a formality, protected the assets I'd brought into the marriage. He was entitled to half of what we'd accumulated together, which turned out to be mostly debt from his failed businesses.
I'm curious, what would you have done in my position? Would you have forgiven him? Taken him back? Or did I take things too far? Drop a comment and let me know because honestly, most people don't have the strength to do what I did. Also, don't forget to subscribe for more powerful stories like this because we'll be sharing more stories about what happens to people who mistake kindness for weakness.
In the end, Marcus walked away with his car, his clothes, and about $12,000 from the sale of some furniture. I kept everything I'd paid for, which was essentially everything. His family blamed me, of course, Patricia called me vindictive. Richard said I was punishing Marcus for one mistake. Janet suggested I was having some kind of midlife crisis. None of them acknowledged that Marcus's one mistake had revealed the true nature of our entire relationship. None of them seemed to grasp that their luxury vacation had been funded entirely by the woman they'd been perfectly willing to see abandoned at the airport. But I didn't need their understanding. I had something much more valuable: my freedom. A year later, I'm sitting in my newly redecorated living room. Marcus always hated my taste in furniture, writing this story. I'm 40 pounds lighter, not because I needed to be, but because stress eating is much less appealing when you're not married to a constant source of stress. I've been on dates with men who think I'm beautiful exactly as I am. I've traveled to places Marcus never wanted to go. I've started my own financial planning firm, focusing on helping women understand and protect their assets. Business is booming. Last month, I ran into Janet at the grocery store. She was polite but cool, clearly still holding the Costa Rica incident against me. As we were wrapping up our awkward conversation, she mentioned that Marcus was dating someone new. "She's very pretty," she said, with just a hint of malice. "I also hope she's very wealthy," I said. Marcus is going to need the financial support. The look on Janet's face was worth every penny of that canceled vacation. People often ask me if I regret my revenge, if I think I went too far. The answer is simple: I didn't go far enough. Marcus spent 8 years teaching me that my love, my loyalty, and my money were things he was entitled to regardless of how he treated me. He convinced me that being wanted was the same as being valued, that being needed was the same as being respected. At that airport, he made a choice. He chose his image over my dignity, his comfort over my feelings, his pride over our marriage. He expected me to absorb that choice and continue funding his life as if nothing had happened. Instead, I made my own choice. I chose my self-respect over his convenience, my freedom over his financial security, my future over his expectations. The real revenge wasn't getting even. It's getting free. And I figured out that the most powerful thing you can do is simply stop paying for the privilege of being treated poorly. The vacation Marcus took without me lasted a week. The vacation from Marcus that I took for myself, that one's permanent. If you loved and enjoyed this story, do not forget to hit that subscribe button, like this video, and share it. Until our next update, take care.